Let me just quickly go through our hearing procedure. Under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a variance shall be granted if four required findings are present. 1. That the strict application of the ordinance would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship and consistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. 2. That there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved or to the intended use or development of the property that do not apply generally to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. 3. That the granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. And 4, that the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. Under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a conditional use permit shall be granted if four required findings are present. 1. That the proposed use will be consistent with the elements and objectives of the general plan. 2. That the use and its associated structures and facilities will not be detrimental to the public health or safety, the general welfare, or the environment. 3. That the use and facilities will not adversely affect or conflict with adjacent uses or impede the normal development of surrounding property. And 4. That adequate public and private facilities will be provided for the use. For applications involving the sale, serving, or consumption of alcoholic beverages, the 5 criteria set forth in subsection A through D shall also be met. And for parking reduction permit, the application shall also meet the procedures and criteria set forth in section 30.32070A and table 30.32B with qualifying project features. If the evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets the criteria just described, then the zoning administrator can either approve or impose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices, which were mailed to property owners located within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper. The hearing will proceed as follows. I will read the description of the application or the request, and then read reports received from other city departments and other letters or communications from interested parties. The case planner will make a brief presentation or overview of the case and make a recommendation. The applicant will then be asked to come forward stating both name and address and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support of or in opposition to this application and any interested parties will be asked to come forward to speak. Again, clearly stating both name and address within a 3-minute time limit. Lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments if desired in response to testimonies given by preceding speakers within a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will be closed and the case taken under submission. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at this hearing or by submitting written responses and have provided their name and mailing address. I would like to emphasize that the date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. Under the appeal provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures on the procedures from our Building and Safety Section, Permit Services Center, located on the same floor of this building. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of these speaker forms, which have been provided by the front door, and submit it to our assistant. I would like to also inform everyone that the official proceedings of the zoning administrator's hearing are recorded on tape as part of public record. Our first case is variance 2009-032. Location is 3055 Piedmont Avenue. This case was continued from the September 30 meeting. Applicant is Pete Volbeda. Property owner is Scott Monroe, and the case planner is Gevorg Nazarian. This is an application for a variance to demolish the existing single-family house and detached two-car garage, and to construct a new two-story single-family house with attached two-car garage on a 4,546 square foot substandard lot located at 3055 Piedmont Avenue, in the R1 low-density residential zone, described as Lot 13 and southwest 6 feet of Lot 24, Block 11 of tract number 5098. And let me just quickly go through some of the comments. Excuse me. From fire prevention, the code requirements may be fire sprinklers, so you're going to have to discuss some of these comments with them. Glendale Water and Power. The developer is responsible to pay the full cost of any relocation of existing electric facilities as a result of this project, and also responsible to pay the full cost of providing electric service to the project. And Glendale Electric Engineering is not responsible for relocation of any other utilities or services. Please contact them if you have any other questions. Engineering. Method of discharge of all on-site drainage shall be approved by the city engineer. Separate permits are required for all work within the public right-of-way. The applicant shall comply with all NPDES requirements, and applicants shall bear all fees in obtaining necessary permits and construction inspections. Additional requirements may be required after the initial submittal of final engineering plans check. From our integrated waste management, applicant must comply with the Glendale construction and demolition waste reduction and recycling plans. I think that's the only comment I have. So, to present the case, Mr. Pete Volbeda.
Good morning. My name is Pete Volbeda. I'm the architect for this submittal. The owners are here also to testify. I hope you've been to the site, because I know Gevorg has been to the site, but because we're dealing with an existing very old home on the rear of the property with a side yard, of 1 foot on one side and 2 foot the other side. You can hardly get to the backyard as it is. And if you don't approve us building a new house on this lot, we would have to, I understand, keep at least existing 50% of the existing roof and exterior walls. And then we've handed you some photos here. Some of the rooms have 6-foot high ceilings. So if we can't touch the roof, we have to keep 6-foot high ceilings. So it's very difficult to deal with this. And then besides that, the previous owner started to build a new garage, detached, really far away from the existing home.
Do you want to come up here and walk me through your site plan so we can...
Here's a plot plan of the existing home. There's a 1-foot side yard here, a 2-foot side yard here. It doesn't even meet, doesn't even have existing usable rear yard. And the previous owner started the garage and didn't finish it. In fact, the district attorney is asking us to please hurry and tear it down or something. And even this has a non-conforming side yard because if we're allowed to build a new house, it would be 6 feet side yard. So even this existing side yard in the garage is doesn't meet code either. And we cannot attach the two. And I don't think we can tear enough of it down to keep 50%. So, and besides that, it has exposed plumbing on the inside, exposed electrical wiring. It's just very difficult to keep this house. So I hope you agree with us for us to be able to do a new home.
The only item in front of me anyway is the size of your lot, so...
No, I know. We'll have
You're going to
later
demolish
hearing on
what's
this.
there anyway, so
We're going to have a later design review hearing for the house.
there's no variance item or problem as far as your proposal is concerned, right?
No, we're not
You're
applying
meeting
for a
all code
variance
requirements.
for the proposal, yes.
You're applying for a variance because your the size of your lot is too small for a
Right.
standard lot.
Right.
So I just want you to walk me through your...
Sure, no problem.
Okay, sure.
That about finishes my presentation. You want to say anything?
Well, you have to walk me, or you have to go through your 4 findings. Tell me why I should approve.
Where's the list of those?
Do you have a copy of your application form?
Let me say, I probably do, but I think I remember what they are off the top of my head. Basically, it has to do with other. I don't have a copy of that in front of me. That's probably right here.
Geborg has it, I
I
think.
probably have it. Did you see it? Yeah. Here we go, okay. Right, that a strict application of the provisions of the ordinance would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships inconsistent with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance. I don't think it's the intent of the ordinance for us to keep side yards that are 1 feet and 2 feet and to keep a detached garage with a non-conforming side yards and to also keep 6-foot high ceilings. So that's not the intent of the
Okay,
ordinance.
let's zero in. I think you're missing the point. There's no question about your proposed
Right.
structure or building. I want you to zero in on the existing size of the lot. And that's exactly why we're here.
Yeah, I got that.
We're going to conform with those 4, so, yes.
Well, I don't think the ordinance intent is to
We're
prohibit.
not asking you to keep any of your existing,
Oh, that's good.
yes, so let's,
Well, without your approval today, at a later date, we would not be able to build a house that would meet the ordinance.
because of your
Because the lot,
substandard.
per your ordinance, a substandard lot is not permitted to have a new home constructed unless we get the variance. So if you do not approve our variance, we have to leave what's there. We cannot build a new home.
You think I will punish you like that? No?
I hope not.
Go ahead.
So for B, that there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved, well, the hardship we have is that we have an existing lot size. In fact, I don't know if you know, we had a delay. We actually have 6 more feet of a property behind us. That still isn't enough to make the lot the correct size for us to build a new home. So the hardship for B is that the lot is just too small and there's no way to make it
And
bigger.
there's nothing else to the left, to the right, and to
I don't
the
think
rear
anybody's
that
gonna
you
sell us
can
any more property.
acquire, right? That's exactly the
And C-
justification. Okay.
And the granting of the variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injures to properties in a neighborhood, mainly because if we do, this is one item that I always sort of, when I hear neighbors protest against a new home we're proposing, it increases their property value. And that may come up at the design review hearing, but it applies here too. A new home will increase everybody's value in the neighborhood. So it actually will not be injurious to their welfare or the value of the property neighborhood. So, but permitting a new home is going to increase their value. So I think it's a positive for the neighborhood. And then D, the variance will not be contracted with the ordinance. The ordinance, again, basically, we will be complying with all the other requirements of the ordinance, which means height, setback, lot coverage, things like that. So we're only not meeting one item, which is a hardship. So that would answer your question.
Finally got it, right?
I didn't know we were going to focus
Okay.
in those
Well, the
four
design is very nice. I really like the design, so I don't think you're going to have any major issues with me on that one.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm going to ask who was the case planner, Gevorg? Go ahead, Gevorg, and give me your recommendation or something.
Thank you, Ms. Fuentes. Good morning. As you mentioned and Mr. Volbeda mentioned, the project is located at 3055 Piedmont Avenue. The area is, that portion of the town actually, most of the lots are substandard, less than 5,000 square feet. This one in particular has a little more square footage than the rest of the lots in the close neighborhood because of that 6 feet
It must be
deed.
the 6 feet at the back.
Yes. And in fact, this case was continued from September 30th because of the issue we had. We wanted to make sure the deed was granted before, whether it was granted before 1956, September 1, 1956, or after. And after the research that was done and provided the papers, we found out that it was actually, in fact, before 1956. That gives the lot a legal status. So that was taken care of. And staff's recommendation is to approve the project because currently the existing house, there's an existing house already on the lot. And all the other lots in the neighborhood are developed with single-family uses. The proposal does not change the use. It's still going to be a single-family dwelling. But what it will do, if it was approved, will provide a house that is more code compliant than what's out there today, including the setbacks and there's other building code issues involved as far as the less than 3 foot setbacks, which is a fire hazard as well. So the provision of providing a 6 foot setback will actually be beneficial to the neighborhood. Besides raising the values of the neighborhood, immediate neighbors will have that benefit of having that separation in case of a, God forbid, a fire. There is that enough separation. Because building department, I believe, requires minimum 3 foot separation from the wall to the property line. And otherwise you cannot have any window openings, even though there are today. So staff recommends an approval of the project with the standard conditions, and that sort of, Mr. Volbeda did most of the work
And
already. So
as you mentioned, there's no other item or variance
no,
coming.
the proposal, once it goes through the DRB procedure, which is pending the decision for the variance, the building will meet code as far as setbacks and height and garage requirements, parking requirements, everything else, landscaping.
That's good.
And
Okay.
it will be more code compliant than what's out there today.
I see a lot of benefit and positive on this project because the existing structure and condition has a lot of non-conforming status or conditions. So this is definitely going to be a positive improvement for the neighborhood. And how about your conditions, Gevorg?
The conditions will be your
just typical recommendations or
Correct.
conditions. Okay, and let me see. Is there anybody else here who would like to? I have. Okay. Who wants to go first, Lindsay or Scott? Or you're gonna have to come up here and speak on the microphone. So, why don't you just introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Lindsay Monroe, and one of the owners of 3055 Piedmont Avenue. Own it with my husband. And I thought that Mr. Volbeda and Gevorg did a great job presenting our findings. It's it's a house that's inhabitable right now, and we just hope that you improve it so we can build a better house that'll be better for the neighborhood and better for our family.
Good.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Scott? And I'm checking the in favor box in your, I'm assuming you're in favor of the project, right? Okay.
Good morning.
Scott?
My name is Scott Monroe, and I concur with everything my wife said.
Okay.
And I've got to say that anyway. But I hope you, like you said, I think they presented it. Pete
Okay.
Borg did a good job presenting, so I'm happy with what they've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak in support or in opposition to this application? Mr. Volbeda, closing comments? Or you would like to remain silent for the rest of the hearing? Okay, great. Well, I'm going to do it for the first time. I'm going to go ahead and approve this case today. And what I'll do is we'll issue the decision letter tomorrow. And based on the staff's recommendations and findings, we will do the typical condition. I have no other specific or special conditions other than the typical conditions we have. So your request for variance to demolish the existing single-family house and detached garage and construct a new two-story single-family house with attached two-car garage on a substandard lot is approved as of today. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Geborg. Okay. Our next case, well, two cases. This is a CUP and a parking reduction, both for 800 South Central Avenue. And if it's acceptable to everyone here, we'll take the two cases together. So case number PCUP 2009-010 and case number PPR 2009-004, located at 800 South Central Avenue. This case was continued from our October 7th hearing. Applicant is Rodney Khan. Owner is Albert Karamanukian. Case planner is Radar Duong. Applications for conditional use permit for on-site sales, service, and consumption of alcoholic beverages, and a parking reduction permit to provide 11 fewer parking spaces than required by code for a proposed full-service restaurant within a new 3-story medical office retail building located at 800 South Central Avenue in the CG Commercial General Zone, described as portions of lots 24 through 26, track number 393. And just going through some of the comments. Okay. From fire prevention, some of their concerns: installation of hood suppression system, provide pre-treatment for industrial waste discharge from the kitchen preparation area, and code requirements will be fire sprinklers for your TI permit or tenant improvement, fire alarm, assembly permit, and industrial waste permit. From Water Department, they have backflow prevention devices that may be required. Any water service or fire line connection, when no longer needed by the customer, must be permanently abandoned. Applicant must check with fire department, and the developer shall install recycled water facilities for irrigation. From Neighborhood Services, they are requesting to add a condition that requires the applicant to comply with all the tobacco and smoking regulations at all times. And they have concerns regarding approval of any entitlement requests which may further exacerbate parking problems. From Environmental Management, their concern is just reduction in parking spaces again, which results in, I can hardly read this guy's handwriting, in, I guess it says carry over to neighboring streets where mandatory street sweeping is done. So, from Traffic and Transportation, they reviewed the parking demand analysis that you submitted, and staff finds that the parking demand analysis has been prepared in a professional manner, utilizing practices and methodologies commonly employed for shared parking analysis. And they concur with the parking analysis finding that the code required parking supply of 201 spaces is excessive and adequate to accommodate the project. That's good. And I'm not going to read the comment from Police Department. I guess Detective Matthew, you're going to go through the comments? Okay, thank you. And hold on for 1 second. I'm going to ask Brother to give us a report and recommendation.
Good morning, Ms. Fuentes. As stated by you, the next item for your considerations are two applications consisting of a conditional use permit and a parking reduction application. These applications are part of a proposal to establish a new 2,460 square foot full-service restaurant. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for the on-site sales, consumption, and service of alcoholic beverages at this restaurant, while the parking reduction permit is required since the proposed restaurant would not be able to provide the required number of parking spaces. The property is located at 800 South Central Avenue, which is Zone CG, Commercial General. The proposed restaurant will be located on the ground floor of a newly built three-story mixed-use retail medical office buildings. The subject site is a 21,849 square foot lot, rectangular in size and surrounded by other commercial developments on three sides and residential development to the rear. The subject site, as I stated, was recently completed with a three-story 37,884 square foot building over 2 levels of subterranean parking consisting of 190 parking spaces. This building was completed on September 16, 2008. There is also a sign program that was recently approved for the entire building. An addendum to the original initial study negative declaration, EIF case number 2002-030, was also prepared as a result of the proposed full-service restaurant and the parking reduction permit.
Go.
That addendum is on file.
You can narrow it.
In regards to the conditional use application, the zoning code requires that findings shall be made for the conditional use application. These findings have been provided and reflected on the application provided by the applicant. The ability to serve beer and wine is an added amenity to the primary service, which is the full-service restaurant. The on-site consumption of alcoholic beverages with a meal is an appropriate pairing. In addition, the restaurant cafeteria style setup is primarily intended to serve the personnel and employees of this building. So, as a whole, the proposed restaurant appears to be incidental to the primary use of this building. The proposed on-site consumption of alcoholic beverages does not appear detrimental to the safety and public welfare of the neighborhood. While there are residential development located to the rear of the subject site, there are no public facilities located nearby. Impacts to residential dwelling units would be less than significant, since the proposed use is not a tavern, a bar, a nightclub, or a banquet hall. The restaurant fronts Central Avenue, and access is provided at the front only. There are no openings directed towards any dwelling units at the rear. Therefore, there would not be any noise-related impacts. As noted in the staff report, the property is located within a census tract that exceeds the recommended number of on-site licenses. The census tract also exceeds the city average for Part 1 crimes. These statistics were given to staff by the police department. The police department has reviewed the applications and support these applications based on the business model, the customer base, and the layout of the restaurant. Similarly, appropriate conditions are suggested in the staff report would also reduce any anticipated impacts. In regards to the parking reduction application, the proposed full-service restaurant, as stated and shown on the exhibit, is 2,460 square feet. That would require 25 parking spaces per the zoning code today. However, the original tenant space was intended to serve as a retail space and was allotted 14 parking spaces. This amounts to a shortfall of 11 parking spaces for the proposed full-service restaurant. As required by the parking reduction permit, the applicant has provided a parking demand study prepared by Applied Planning, Inc., which was reviewed by the Traffic and Transportation Division. In the study, Applied Planning, Inc. used the shared parking approach to parking analysis in a mixed-use development such as this one. The shared parking analysis was prepared to determine if the existing 190 parking spaces would meet the demand of the proposed uses, including the proposed full-service restaurant. When 201 parking spaces are required by code. The findings in the report showed that the peak weekday parking demand would be 187 spaces, while the weekend peak demand would be 186 spaces. Both the weekday and weekend peak demands are slightly below the existing supply of 190 spaces. Additionally, the Assistant Traffic and Transportation Administrator has reviewed the document and concurred with the assessment and the methodology as described in the report provided to us. Through the parking demand study, the shared parking approach demonstrated that conventional parking requirement per the Glendale zoning code would subject the various land uses to an excessive parking requirement. The provided parking would meet the demand for the proposed uses in the building, including the proposed restaurant. In both application requests for conditional use permit and parking reduction, staff finds that positive findings can be made in support of both applications, and therefore staff recommends approval of both the conditional use permit and the parking reduction with some conditions. You may, I can go over those conditions as well.
Okay.
One, that the development adheres to the approved sign program, case number PDR 2009-9-013, for all current and future tenants. Two, that the sales and service of alcoholic beverages be limited between the hours of 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Sunday. Three, that the conditional use permit expires in 3 years, at which point a new conditional use permit application shall be applied for. Four, that any expansion of the facility in service, amenity, and square footage requires a new conditional use permit. Five, that the establishment of a banquet hall shall not be permitted. Six, that the proposed full-service restaurant adheres to the city fresh air, which is the smoking ordinance. And seven, that the establishment of a separate bar within the restaurant is prohibited. And that concludes my presentation. The applicant and the owner are also here to present the case and answer any question you may have.
Okay. And in your conditions, I was just going to mention that condition number, I think condition number 4, that any expansion of the facility in service, amenity, and square footage requires a new conditional use permit and parking reduction permit, because right now they're already short
Correct.
of parking.
That is a good.
So, and I normally would add to the as determined by the zoning administrator, the typical wording that we have there. Because just in case the expansion is increase in square footage, then that will trigger the parking reduction permit.
Correct. That's a valid
Okay.
point. And also, staff would like to state that these are conditions above what are standard conditions, so
Right.
there may be more once the
Added,
decision
right.
letter is issued.
Okay, thank you. To present the case, Mr. Rodney Kahn.
Good morning, Ms. Fuentes
Good morning.
and city staff. My name is Rodney Kahn, and my offices are located at 1111 North Brand Boulevard, Suite 403 here in the city of Glendale. In terms of the presentation itself, I thought rather gave us a nice summary of what's taking place. What we're trying to do is establish the Green Tea Cafe. That's the name of the subject restaurant. And it's located at part of the ground floor, about 2,500 square feet, of the St. Mary's Medical Center. And this St. Mary's Medical Center is about 38,000 square feet. It has 190 on-site parking spaces, and it's located on the southeast corner of Windsor Road and Central Avenue. With me today, I have Dr. K, Dr. Albert Karamanukian. Dr. K will own and operate the restaurant. He also owns and developed the medical office building, and actually owns the residential apartment building, which is directly east of this site to the rear as well.
That's why we didn't get any comments, right?
Yeah. So he very much has a vested interest not only in operating this restaurant in a professional manner, but obviously his tenants and his own property is important to note. In terms of the findings themselves, what I do is I'll address this conditional use permit findings and the additional findings, and then I'll, at the tail end, go over the parking reduction request, if that's okay. The first, that the proposed use will be consistent with the various elements and objectives of the general plan. This site, as you can tell by its zoning designation CG, is part of the South Brand Boulevard specific plan. This use, a restaurant, cafe use, is a permitted use in this zone designation. It's also consistent with the land use element for this area in the South Brand specific plan. The circulation element of the general plan, and maybe we can talk about that for a second. There was two items that were discussed as it relates to circulation. One is traffic, and the other is parking. When the original building was proposed, there was a CEQA document that was done that analyzed both the parking and the traffic. Then subsequently, there has been another analysis done, which I'll talk about in the parking reduction request, which looked at the parking. Both in terms of the traffic circulation and the parking requirements, we meet code in terms of what we are proposing. The circulation element of the general plan talks about pedestrian-friendly businesses, which primarily serve the neighborhood where they are located. The Green Tea Cafe is such a business. And then finally, as it relates to the sale or service of alcoholic beverages, this restaurant, a full-service restaurant, will serve beer, wine, and liquor. And I wanted to clarify that because it was just
distilled spirits.
Yes,
Okay.
distilled spirits. Thank you very much. Of course, in conjunction with the food service.
Okay.
And as stated in the conditions of approval, there will not be a separate bar, and we can go over all the other ones at the end because I do have a question or two about one or two of them. In terms of the consistency with the various elements and objectives of the general plan, we feel that this proposed restaurant does so. Second, and I'll try to be a little bit quicker and briefer, that the use and its associated structures and facilities will not be detrimental to public health or safety, to general welfare, or the environment. One of the things that's taking place at this facility is primarily it is a medical office building. If you look at the square footage, we have about 35,000 square feet of medical office. We have about 1,000 or so square feet of pharmacy and about 2,500 square feet of restaurant/cafe. So this is truly an incidental use to the primary use, which is the medical office building. Two things are taking place which is very complementary for us. One is we would look at that we would have a lot of what's called internal capture. So we're going to have people that are coming to the medical office building to see their doctors. We'll have visitors, we'll have medical office personnel, and also doctors themselves that are going to be already at the location frequenting, we hope, this restaurant cafe. The second thing is that in terms of the complementary hours of operation, the medical office building is primarily busiest during the day, as you can imagine. It operates somewhere around 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 8 a.m. to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. And Sunday, the medical office building's not open. Our restaurant cafe, we're looking at operating obviously during the hours of operation of the medical office building, but we're hoping to, because this is a substantial investment in this building, to get some dinner crowd, whether it be the doctors themselves that are coming down, which we hope, or drawing to this facility. The reason that that's important to note is when the medical office building is closed, we will actually have 190 parking spaces for a 2,500 square foot restaurant. So obviously there's internal capture and there's also a complementary hours of operation of the mix of uses. Finally, there will be continuous compliance with federal, state, county, and obviously local requirements, including alcoholic beverage control for the restaurant. On a side note, right now this photographs that's shown, the aerial, shows it prior to the building being built. The building has been built and is operational. It's about 80% occupied right now with tenants. All medical office type tenants. As I move along, that the use and facilities will not adversely conflict with adjacent uses. As I mentioned, there's a kind of an interesting dynamic going on here. To the north of us is a shopping center that's two-story commercial retail. To the south of us is a restaurant. To the west of us is more commercial retail along Central. And to the east of us is the only residential. And that's an 8-unit residential building that Dr. Karamanukian, owns as well. So he's rented that out. Those are rental units. He will continue to own that. So in terms of being consistent or compatible with the surrounding uses, it very much is. The second thing that's important to note, as Rather pointed out, Our restaurant is located and oriented along Central Avenue. It has no openings to the rear or even to the north as it relates to noise. The second thing is we do not have outdoor dining, which you see in a lot of the areas that they do. Typically, in the evenings, if there's noise that's going to take place, it's usually in the outdoor area as opposed to being contained on the inside. And that's not what we're doing here either. That adequate public and private facilities, such as utilities, landscaping, parking spaces, and traffic circulation measures are provided for the proposed use. Because it is a brand-new building, it has already gone through a level of review from the city for public and private utilities. So water, sewer, cable, et cetera, is already provided to the site. In terms of the parking, I'll address that in the next application, so I won't be redundant and repeat that, but it will provide the adequate parking. Landscaping, traffic circulation, I've already addressed and discussed, and this information is on file and on record. So we will be consistent, adequately addressing the public and private facilities. That is the typical 4 CUP findings as it relates to an application. Now, since we are serving alcoholic beverages, we do have additional findings, or Part 4 findings that need to be made. What I'll do is maybe the first 2 I'll address together because they are applicable together. The first one, that where an existing or proposed on-sale use is located in a census tract with more than the recommended maximum concentration of on-sale uses, or where an existing or proposed off-sale use is located in a census tract with more than the recommended maximum concentration of off-sale uses, such use does not or will not tend to intensify or otherwise contribute to the adverse impacts on the surrounding area caused by such overconcentration. That's the first one. The second one, that where the existing or proposed use is located in a crime reporting district with a crime rate which exceeds 20% of the city average for Part 1 crimes, such use does not or will not tend to encourage or intensify crime within the district. When we started off this application, I spoke to 2 different people in the police office. One was Lieutenant Bruce Fox, and he had, we had talked in depth in terms of what we were proposing. The way that it was described to him, and I think it reflects in the comments, and I don't know if the gentleman from the police department is going to speak on it or not, is that because of the customer base, professional customer base that's taking place that will frequent the restaurant, the way that the restaurant layout has been proposed, that they did not see that this would intensify or cause negative impacts on the surrounding area. And obviously, that reflected in the comments that were submitted, and hopefully the comments if it's going to be presented. The third item, that the existing or proposed use does not or will not adversely impact any church, public or private school, college, daycare facility, public park, library, hospital, or residential use within the surrounding area. First of all, there are no churches, public or private schools, colleges, daycare facilities, public parks, libraries, or hospitals within the surrounding immediate area. There is a residential land use to the east, which I already spoke of, and how there are no openings there. It's a common property owner. We're very sensitive to the way that that operates and the way we operate in conjunction with it. The closest opening to the residential area is about 175 feet away, oriented away from the residential building. Fourth, that adequate parking and loading facilities are or will be provided for the existing or proposed use. There was a parking demand analysis that was provided. I'll go into a little bit more in depth on that study in the next application, but it discussed not only the parking on site, but that we're also in close proximity to public transportation along Central Avenue. Fifth, that notwithstanding consideration of the criteria in subsections 1 through 4, which are the 1 through 4 I just read, the existing or proposed use does or will serve a public necessity or public convenience for the area. This is a very unique type of restaurant in that it is not a standalone restaurant. It is part of an overall mixed-use commercial facility, and it is designed to primarily capture or internally capture the customer base that's already coming to the existing building. Those are the findings as it relates to the conditional use permit. I'll be happy to go on to the parking reduction request, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy
Keep
to answer
going.
them.
I'll
Okay.
just reserve my questions at the end.
Sure. The next application, which is the parking reduction permit application, and there's a part 4 findings of facts, and there's different criteria, as you know, that qualifies for a parking reduction request. What we are looking at is 4 mixed-use projects,
Okay.
and that's number A. And I'll go through 1 through 4, and then also I'll dive into the report a little bit. 1, how many parking spaces are required by code? As staff mentioned, 201. How many parking spaces are you providing? 190. So there's a difference of 11 parking spaces. Describe the characteristics of the proposed mix of uses that would justify a parking reduction. And I'll talk about that in the parking study. I've already talked about the internal capture and the complementary hours of operation, but I'll elaborate that on this study as well. And then for each use, provide the number of spaces required by land use on an hourly basis between 6 a.m. and midnight for a typical weekday and a Saturday. The analysis that was done, and it was done in conjunction with the scope of work being defined by the city, traffic and transportation, primarily dealing with Tom Mitchell, who's the Assistant Traffic and Transportation Administrator. The report itself, which is a study of analysis, talks about the concept of shared parking. And what they do is they take from the Urban Land Use Institute, or ULI, and talk about shared parking. It says shared parking can and does occur in mixed-use developments, with the result being a net peak parking demand less than the gross parking demand calculated by summing the individual parking requirements of the land use comprising the development, if certain conditions exist. And these first 2 conditions apply directly to our project. 1, that variations in the peak accumulation of parked vehicles due to time differences in the activity patterns of land uses, which is ours. And second, that the relationship among land use activities that result in people being attracted to 2 or more land uses on a single auto trip to a given building or development. The second thing that I think is applicable to this report, and you guys should have this on record. If you don't, I'll give you mine. The second thing that has that's worthy of discussion is when there was an analysis done, which is on every hour on the hour from 6 to midnight, that the weekday peak parking demand, which rather noted, was 187. That was at 2 p.m. Obviously, prior to that or after that is less than peak. Table 2 indicates the project's peak parking demand on a weekend would occur at 1 p.m. And that's also a little bit different. Once again, it's interesting to note that on the weekend, which is a Saturday and Sunday, the medical office building is closed. And then on Saturday, it closes at 3 o'clock. So if there's going to be any peak time, it's actually going to be for a very short period of time. And then we would have quite a number of parking spaces that would be open and available to the restaurant. Nevertheless, even at the peak, we still have more than sufficient parking to address all of the vehicles that would be coming to this facility. The recommendation from this report, because you mentioned in your comments that the traffic and transportation section said that the report was done professionally and that they concur with its recommendation. So I'd like to read you what the recommendation is. The recommendation from the report is that a parking reduction permit should be granted by the City of Glendale for the proposed mixed-use project, specifically in lieu of the GMC-based requirement of 201 parking spaces. The project's proposed parking supply of 190 parking spaces should be deemed adequate based upon the results of the shared parking analysis summarized in this memorandum report. So that was the recommendation that your traffic department agrees with and concurs. I'll conclude my remarks. I do have some questions about the conditions or recommendations of the conditions, but I don't know if you wanted
Right,
to.
I'm
hear the
going
other
to go
speaker.
through, and why don't we have him?
And then I can come back up?
Yes,
Great.
and I'll ask you the questions. Thank you. Okay, Detective Matthew Prakash.
Matthew Prakash.
Prakash.
I work for
Go
the
ahead.
Glendale Police Department, Vice Narcotics Bureau. Our lieutenant, my boss, Bruce Fox, oversees the permits, and he makes remarks on approving or denying them, or proposing approval and denial. We looked into this address and its surrounding neighborhoods, and as Mr. Rather mentioned, that for the census tract, there's 11 on-sale premises that's operating, and this one would make it 12, which is 200%, because 6 is allowed in that census tract. As far as the crime stats go, it's 141% above what's the norm for the city. As Mr. Khan mentioned, having a business like this would not adversely affect the crime stats or the neighbor itself. We are I'm basically in agreement with Mr. Khan as long as the establishment stays as what he proposes. It stays as a full-service restaurant with emphasis being on restaurant. We don't want to see the establishment turn into, as Mr. Rather mentioned, a banquet hall or a bar of any type. That's why that I'm here to make a recommendation that certain conditions be set forth on the CUP. So if it happens to turn into a banquet hall or something that deviates from original proposal, then we can review the CUP again at that time. The conditions that I would like to see we would like to see on the CUP would be no arcade, no dancing, no pool table, no live entertainment, and no alcohol sale after a certain hour. As Mr. Rather proposed, 11 p.m. seems like it's appropriate.
Okay. And just to let you know, the zoning administrator has continuing jurisdiction on any of these discretionary approvals. However, I concur with your recommended conditions as far as it not morphing into a bar or a banquet hall. But I'm going to have to look at if the zone legally permits or allows live entertainment and those other uses that could go with a full-service restaurant, then we may need to look into that. Okay?
Because the reason I mention these conditions is that if as Mr. Khan mentions, if the business is a restaurant and their purpose is to serve the people that come to the facility, mainly for as you mentioned, the doctors or the customers or the patients or visitors that visit the establishment, I don't really think they have much need for the arcade or dancing or pool table or live
Well,
entertainment.
we on a full-service restaurant, we do allow like a one-piece or two-piece piano player or guitar player, those type. I don't want to just restrict it to, especially if the zone, like I said, we're going to check them all. If the zone allows like live entertainment, we can limit it to a one person, like piano playing. Sometimes they'll have a guitar player or something,
if you could-
but not a full-blown live band or something.
Right. I've seen CUPs where before some places they said a single piano player or something like that. But I think
Yes.
if you leave it open and say yes to live entertainment, it could be.
And they will be required to apply separate permits for those type of additional uses anyway. So I agree with you as far as arcades or billiard, pool tables, none of that sorts, and definitely to remain as a full-service restaurant as represented at the public hearing. Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for coming. Seeing there's okay, Mr. Albert Karamanukian.
Good morning. My name is Albert Karamanukin. I am resident of 2226 Hollister Terrace in Glendale.
Okay.
I'm a physician myself, and I own the building. As Mr. Khan mentioned, and you can visit the building. It's a piece of art building, City of Glendale. We put a lot of investment there, and we would like to be very comfortable, not only for the citizen, for the doctor and the patient come to the building. It's really, if you have a chance one time, come and visit and go to the units of the doctors, which we designed it also. We made it like move in for the doctors, everybody feel comfortable. We're going to have there approximately 25 doctors practicing, include facility for diagnostic. We have MRI there. We're going to have outpatient surgical center there. The building, it's B-class building. It's built like the hospital building. There is a backup generator. It's built very nicely. As you know, there is 190 parking. Very nice parking. The idea came from the doctors itself. Where we're going to go if we need to have some lunch for coffee, or even if we invite somebody from outside, where it's better to be in the building. And they gave me opportunity to have this kind of idea to have green tea cafe. It's kind of cafe and restaurant that we can prepare our food inside, And also, as mentioned, at night when the building is closed, doctors themselves, they have their guests, family members, and also from outside to come and listen to nice music, like, as you say, piano, guitar, or something, solo, something not, we're not going to have dance party there or, a loud music. It's going to be inside, and also we are integrating with this restaurant. We would like idea to put the pharmacy part of this restaurant in the future, if we can, that we can kind of be a nice new design of the, people can have a coffee, waiting for their medication, this and that in the future. It's going to be like family kind of things, nothing outside, and it's not going to attract any crime or this. As you know, I own the building. Mr. Khan told you in the back they have 8 families. I don't want to have jeopardized these people, rest and life. Thank you very much.
And I'm glad, Mr. Oh, you're also a doctor.
I'm a doctor. I'm MD.
Dr. Karamanukian.
And I'm going to practice too,
That you're here, so you heard the comments from our police department.
As Mr. Rodney told you.
And I'm sure you have no concerns or problems with the comments that they have.
No.
Okay.
But we would like to be on the same page that what we are talking here, that we don't strike any kind. We don't want violence.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Khan. Closing comments, and I just want to confirm the area for the cafe or restaurant would be just this area here, right?
That's correct.
That's the one.
Yes.
And then the restroom facility is the one adjacent to that.
That is
Okay,
correct.
great. Okay, closing comments.
Yes, Ms. Fuentes, thank you. In terms of the gentleman that spoke from the police department, we as Dr. Karamanukian mentioned, we're not looking to have an arcade. We're not looking to have pool tables. We're not looking to have any of those types of things. We would like to have the ability to have either a piano player or a guitar player or something that would be located in the restaurant that would be beneficial for the visitors or customers that are coming there.
At any rate, when those applications come in, they will have to go through police department.
That's no
also.
problem at all. Yeah, we just want to make sure that we get that on the record as well. The second thing that I want to talk about, because I think that in terms of the recommendations, obviously we we can go through each one. We feel comfortable with them. There are a couple, though, that I would ask that you give us just a little bit of flexibility.
Okay.
And in terms of the hours of operation, and it talks about, number 2, the sales and service of alcoholic beverages be limited between the hours of 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Sunday. One of the things that I did in preparation for this hearing was I went and I looked at some of the other restaurants that have been recently approved, and recent is in the last couple of years because there haven't been a lot, on Central Avenue. And I contacted them. And one of them was the Phoenicia on Central and Lexington. Another was on, it's the Cheesecake Factory at the Americana. There's not been a lot of restaurants. All of them, or both of them, sell and serve alcoholic beverages. All of them go much later than what is being required of us. They are also, one is adjacent to residential to the west. The other has, if you look at the Americana, it has residential within it, but not directly adjacent to it. It's actually within it. I guess what I'm trying to say is those restaurants, which are very good and very beneficial to our city, in no way am I saying anything less than positive about them, but they are able to operate in an outdoor environment with the sale of alcoholic beverages going later into the evening than we are restricted to. If I could suggest that the alcoholic beverages, if we're limited to the hours of midnight instead of 11 p.m. During the weekday, and then if we could do up to 1 a.m. on the weekend. Once again, we are totally internal. We are part of an overall center. The landowners that are around us are the same one. If we could get that flexibility, we would appreciate that.
Okay. Anything else?
The second thing would be, and this is...
I can't answer you right now.
Understood, and I'm assuming that. The second thing is that in terms of the expiration of the conditional use permit, at 3 years, Dr. Karmanukian has spent many, many millions of dollars to build the building, and going to spend, I don't want to say millions, hundreds of thousands more for the tenant improvement work. We would assume, because he owns the land around and his offices are there, the business is there, that he's going to be a very good, very professional person as it relates to operating the restaurant. If there is any flexibility to, say, go to 5 years instead of 3 years, that would be something else that, if you would consider, we'd appreciate it. All of the rest of them we're comfortable with in terms of what the requirements are, and there are several, and we appreciate you giving thought to those few minor changes.
Minor.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
So this is going to be a new license, not transfer or...
That is correct.
One additional license. Hours of operation. Days of operation. Are you going to be 7 days a week?
For the restaurant, it's going to be 7 days a week. Obviously, I mentioned the medical office will be 5.5 or 6.
Can you give me a ballpark figure how many employees you're going to have?
It's a fairly small restaurant.
Small,
Yeah,
minimum to maximum?
I would say we'd probably have between
Thank you very much. Yeah.
5 to 6 people working at the restaurant.
On weekdays?
Yeah,
And
weekdays and
more?
maybe 8 on the weekends.
Okay.
Like I said, 2,500 square feet. It's not a huge
Yes,
establishment.
That's the only reason that I'm kind of inclined to look at some of the changes, because it's such a small area. But I'm going to have to also look at possible expansion or, in the future. But
Sure.
if that's going to be limited to that, then maybe I can discuss this with the case planner.
That'd be great. And as you mentioned in here, if there is future expansions, we would come back before you anyway.
I will limit you to no comeback.
Okay.
Okay, seeing, do you have any other comments, Mr. Duong?
No, Ms. Fuentes.
Okay.
Thing to add.
Did you make note of those requests? Well, typically on the first time CUP, we do a 3-year and then 5 years, then 7 years, or 10 years. But
Right.
we'll look into that. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. I'm going to go ahead take these 2 cases under submission. We'll let you know, and I'm closing the public hearing at 10:45 in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you.